Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission for August 19th, 2021. The time is 4:30 p.m. My name is Margot Shaw and I serve as the Library Commission Affairs Analyst. As an ongoing reminder, due to the COVID-19 health emergency and to protect library commissioners, staff, and the public, the Library Commission meeting is being held virtually and members will participate in the meeting remotely pursuant to orders issued by the mayor and the governor. Public comment will be available for each item on this agenda. Members of the public can observe the meeting using the Webex system by following the link in the library's event calendar or by calling local 1-415-655-0001 and entering the access code for the meeting. The access code for today's meeting is 146-363-5016. To make public comment when connected by phone, please raise your hand by dialing *3 when public comment is called and to be called to the queue for the agenda item you intend to comment on. Individuals joining by Webex should click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the participant panel in order to be added to the queue. Best practices to make public comments are to call from a quiet location, speak clearly and slowly, and turn down your television or radio. Each commenter will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Anyone wishing to make a public comment on an agenda item will remain on mute until their line is open. Chris McAuliffe from Media Service Operations will facilitate this meeting and assist in moderating. Public comment. Mr. McAuliffe will call upon members of the public by name or by caller number to prompt each attendee who wishes to provide public comment. I will now commence with roll call. Library commissioners in attendance are President Wardell Giarduzzi, Vice President Pete Wong, Commissioners Lee, Mall, Ano, Wolf, and Lopez. You're muted.
Thank you very much. I had to unmute myself there. Hello and welcome to the August 19th meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. The San Francisco Public Library Commission will begin reading our Ramatusha Loney land acknowledgement. The San Francisco Public Library Commission acknowledges that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramatusha Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that the Ramatusha Ohlone understand the interconnectedness of all things and have maintained harmony with nature for millennia. We honor the Ramatusha Ohlone peoples for their enduring commitment to Rfp Mother Earth. As the indigenous protectors of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramatusha Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all people who reside in their traditional territory. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. As uninvited guests, we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramatusha community. We recognize to respectfully honor Ramatusha peoples, we must embrace and collaborate meaningfully to record indigenous knowledge and how we care for San Francisco and all its peoples. Thank you, members of the public who are attending this meeting remotely. If you have not done so already, all the materials for this meeting are available for download on the Library Commission page of the library's website, which is sfpl.org. We have a total of 6 agenda items today, so we are going to begin with number 1 on the agenda, and we're going to open it up to general public comment. Members of the public who wish to provide general public comment should now raise their hands in order to be added to the queue. If you are using the WebEx interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. And if you have called into the Webex dial-in number at 1-415-655-0001, please press *3 to line up to speak.
Madam Chair, Operations is checking to see if there are any callers in the queue. If you've not already done so, please raise your hand in Webex or press *3 on your phone to be added to the queue. For those already on hold in the queue, please continue to wait until it is your turn to speak.
Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Yes, Madam President, there are callers in the queue.
Thank you. Would you put the first caller through, please?
Call-in user 10, your 3 minutes starts now.
Is that me?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Warfield here, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com and also by mail at P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. I do give that information, and I've been giving it more frequently recently because I think it's important that some facsimile of live in-person meetings happen. And at a live meeting, one can go up to somebody and say, I thought what you said was interesting, or somebody can come up to one and one can have a cup of coffee or exchange contact information and so on. That's unfortunately not possible in these meetings, so that's why I give it, and I ask you to include it in the minutes. This week, all of the libraries finally became open for in the building service, and that's a good landmark. The downside, unfortunately, is there isn't a single minute of evening hours, and the service in certain respects is partial. There is very little current. In some of the branches I've looked at and checked, there's basically some partial, though not always full, daily newspaper availability for all the papers that the branch usually gets, and the magazines have often been either absent or, for the most part, quite late, sometimes months and months behind and not current. That's a service goal that I think is important for a library, especially one that talks about democracy and helping people be good citizens. That's important. There has been, unfortunately, on this agenda and not on previous ones as well, that I can recall, a performance evaluation. How is the library doing, and what are the problems that need to be solved? There isn't a minute after 5:30 anywhere in the system open in the past. You've had till 9 o'clock, multiple 3 nights a week at least, in the past even more nights a week. There's no plan that I have seen regarding getting current newspapers all there, as well as current magazines. There have been technical problems with phones, with computers, and with copiers. There's a real degradation of copiers. No 11 by 17 paper, and no privacy. And I wanted to say that the Sunshine Task Force found that you, the Commission, were in violation, including the chair, for not having given a proper opportunity for public comment in your July meeting, but many of the practices that you have done continue, including wrong instructions on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there any other commenters in the queue?
No, Madam President, there are no more callers.
Okay. Let's just pause for a moment just to see if there's anyone else that will show up. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
No, Madam President, no more callers.
Okay. So hearing no further requests for comment, general public comment is now closed. So we're going to move on now to item number 2 of our agenda, which is the SFPL patron borrowing trends for discussion. So this is an item for discussion and will not require a action from the commission. So I'm going to turn it over to the city librarian and the team members.
Thank you, President Wardell, and good evening, commissioners. The San Francisco Public Library recently concluded our fiscal year FY21 on June 30th. And since that time, our research, strategy, and analytics unit has completed some statistical record keeping that allows us to review and reflect on the circulation trends of the past year. This report is a follow-up to a request made from Commissioner Lopez a few meetings back. And our Chief of Collections and Technical Services, Shelley Cocking, is here this evening to provide this report. Shelley?
Thank you, Michael. Yes, as Michael said, I'm Shelley Cocking. I'm the Chief of Collections and Technical Services, and I'm here to talk to you today about patron borrowing trends over the last 18 months. Next slide. In mid-May of 2020, we were sent home to shelter in place. And the very next day, my staff and I started to think about how could we continue to serve our community while our buildings were closed. This was the start of a journey to discover how to serve our patrons in a new and continually changing way. Next slide. We first focused on increasing access to our e-collections. We lowered our holds to holding ratios from 3:1 to 2:1, significantly reducing the waiting time for ebooks and other media. We increased our ordering frequency from twice a week to up to 5 times a week. Soon after the closing, the library started offering digital access cards. So San Francisco residents who didn't have library cards already could apply for them and get access to our collections. And this was a great help to my staff. Vendors and publishers were also a great help during this time. Hoopla and Canopy offered free bonus checkouts for people who had already hit their limits for the month. Publishers offered free or deeply discounted materials for us. And Macmillan even eliminated their 90-day ebook embargo for libraries. We also wanted to help our community fill their time at home with being able to learn something new. Here on the screen, you can see a few samples of some of our e-learning resources. Not long prior to the pandemic, we moved over from lynda.com to LinkedIn Learning. And this was a great benefit because we went from having 7,000 courses with them to 16,000, and many of them now available in Chinese, Spanish, and Japanese. We also added Udemy, which is a similar service, and they were able to provide us with classes in Spanish, Japanese, and Chinese. We partnered with our coworkers in public affairs to promote these resources on our web pages through email blasts and newsletters. Next slide, please. As we settled into shelter in place and at-home learning kicked in, we focused on how best to serve the youth in our community. The library has an annual scholar card drive, and this year we offered digital access cards instead. This provided almost 58,000 cards to students. This new twist on the work done by our community partners and programming division was essential for my staff to be able to provide collections to the kids during this time. We also wanted to be able to provide actual physical books to kids. So we expanded the idea of our community redistribution program and started to purchase new books to give directly to the children. We made connections with other agencies through the COVID Command Center, and we're able to provide books directly to low-income youth throughout the city. Here you can see a list of the different agencies we've worked with, and some examples include providing bags of books to children attending the hubs. We made regular deliveries to families living in low-income housing that had contracted COVID, and also to families living in the COVID hotels. And of course, we can't forget about the big Summer Together big book bundle giveaway that we're still doing now. In total, we have been giving away over 100,000 books and craft kits to our community. Next slide. Wanted to take a quick look at some statistics to see how successful we were reaching these youth in our communities. On this screen, you can see the usage for BrainFuse. This is an online tutoring service that we provide. And you can see when San Francisco Unified School District started offering school at home for kids in April of 2020, we went from a daily average tutoring sessions of 31.5 per day to over 71 per day. Next slide. E-circulation by kids up to the age of 12 saw a massive increase during this time. If you compare our fiscal year 21 circulation to fiscal year 19, we saw over a 200% increase.
Wow.
One question I had was, are we successfully reaching all the kids throughout our city? So I asked to have a map made of where the usage is. And you can see here from all the green dots on the map that we are indeed reaching the kids all over our city. This isn't surprising because San Francisco Unified School District decided to use Hoopla as their virtual school library. So we were serving the schools in that way with our product. Some of my staff even attended virtual classes to promote to the kids how to use this product. Next slide. Another area of concern for us was to make sure residents of the city who prefer books and media in languages other than English had access during this shelter in place. I am happy to share with you that we saw significant increases in circulation in these areas as well when you compare fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 21, especially with youth collections. You can see on the screen here that the Overdrive Chinese language ebook circulation went up 274%, and Spanish language materials saw an increase of 123%. We did, of course, help by supplementing the budgets in this area during this time. Hoopla has a Spanish language collection as well, and we saw an increase in usage there of 85%. Over the past year and a half, purchasing physical collections for this collection had some real challenges. Our vendors suffered during this time. It was very hard for them to acquire books since they couldn't travel to the countries where they normally went to select them. And even when they were trying to ship these materials into the US, there was major delivery delays. Normally, these collections are selected by our committees made up of staff who are native speakers and work in our communities as our branches in the main library. Most of those staff, however, ended up having to work as DSW workers doing contact tracing over the past year. Technical services staff were able to help out by filling in this year, taking on the duties of ordering the materials that normally they only catalog. Happy to say that patrons use these collections a lot by browsing and connecting with staff. So when we opened our doors again, we saw a major increase in the uses of this collection. The circulation here is actually recovering quicker than our English language books and media. You can see from the charts here on the slide that the circulation for Mission Bay, Chinatown, and the Maine. The yellow bars are the circulation from during our SFPL to go time, and we have a sample here of March and April of 2021. And the green bars are the first 2 months where these locations were open for public service. And you can see the big increases in circulation there. Next slide, please. We were very happy when SFPL to go started and we were able to get patrons connected back with our physical collections. My staff focused on BiblioCommons lists that would encourage patrons to start using our physical collections again by focusing on titles that were not available in e-format. And you can see an example here of films that you can't stream. They created lots of genre lists to try to replace that browsing experience of walking down the shelves of our mysteries or science fiction collections. We even launched our Biblioboutique services during this time. And you may remember the presentation on that back last fall. Months before we opened our doors again for patrons to come in, my staff worked hard to refresh our collections. We had to completely relaunch our Lucky Day collection because, of course, those books still on the shelf from March of 2020 wouldn't make patrons feel particularly lucky seeing those. We even decided to pilot a Chinese Lucky Day collection at Chinatown. We are tracking the circulation statistics very closely as we reopen to see what collections are most used, and we'll continue to pivot to meet demand when needed. The graphs you see here on this screen show how the physical circulation is increasing as we open for in-person service. It's still very early to be sure on trends, but early results I found are very interesting. So we have samples here you can see for Maine, Chinatown, and Mission Bay. The A sample is the pre-pandemic circulation, and I selected September and October of 2019 because those are some of our highest circulation months. B is our SFPL to-go service during March and April. And C are the first 2 months of our first in-person service, June and July. Trends so far at these locations are very different. You can see Mission Bay is actually almost back to pre-pandemic circulation levels. And the real big hit here are children's materials. Picture books are up 68% compared to pre-pandemic circulation. Easy readers and chapter books are seeing circulation increases of over 50%. Not surprisingly, at Chinatown, our biggest hit was Chinese fiction. It was nice to see that the Lucky Day circulation actually increased 21% already over pre-pandemic times. So our addition to the Chinese language collection there was definitely a big hit. The main library first opened with access to just the first floor and the main children's room. So not surprisingly, the highest circulation collections there are their fiction titles, which are just shy of its pre-pandemic circulation already, and their DVDs and Blu-rays. Next slide. I want to take a moment to step back and view circulation trends over a longer period. Physical circulation has been dropping consistently over the past 10 years as some of our patrons choose to move over to e-media. And you can see here at the very end that the shelter in place had a major impact on that trend, not surprisingly. Yeah. Next slide. Let's zoom in and look on the circulation trends over the past 24 months. As you can see, that big drop where shelter in place had that major impact. But then as we reopen across the city, our physical circulation continues to grow as different kinds of services are offered once again. And as we continue to expand our hours back to the pre-pandemic time, we expect to see this growth continue. The big question, however, is by how much and in what areas of the collection will we see the growth? We will watch carefully as we fully reopen and ensure that we meet demand now that all of our locations are open again for in-person service. Next slide. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you so much, Shelley, for that report. We're going to look forward to having a conversation with you shortly. But before we go to that, we're now going to go to our public comment before the commission discussion. And so I'm going to ask operations, are there any individuals in the queue?
No, Madam President, there are no callers in the queue at this time.
Well, let's just wait for a moment because they may be trying to dial in.
Oh, yes, one has just showed up.
Great. Would you put the commenter through, please?
Of course. Call-in user 10, your 3 minutes starts now.
Good afternoon. It's Peter Warfield again, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com and also by mail at P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. Some housekeeping things. There's no date on the report There are no page numbers. I'm sure that as an experienced presenter and library worker that Shelley Cocking surely would know that page numbers will help, especially in a conference like this or a meeting like this where some people don't get to see what's on your screen, if in fact you're showing it, but only can go by page numbers and referring to what's on their home computer if they have one or on what's been mailed to them. It would be thoughtful of you and the Library Commission to insist that there be page numbers. This report focuses almost entirely on the library's favored medium, which is e-materials, e-books, and so on. And it goes on and boasts about how things are improving and so on. So let me just say that on the last page, it seems to me that there's a very strong showing for published materials. I guess that's the secret code for PCERC. So real books not only have been exceeding the e-materials all along prior to COVID, but have been making a very strong comeback, as you can see, where between April 2020 and July 21, they are growing faster than the relatively flat e-circulation. And I think that there's a very strong demand and strong desire for such materials, and it should be satisfied. One of the things that is misleading as far as I'm concerned is there's no clarity as to the availability of the different materials. You have converted some of the materials to just e-materials and completely cut out certain materials that used to have paper or both paper and e-materials. So your stats are twisted and biased by forced e-borrowing when there's no print, by providing e-books when there are no books available, when there's a wait list for the actual books, but not a wait list for e-books. If you have more e-books available to be circulated and more quickly circulated or whatever you have compared with books, and I can tell, then you're going to have a bias toward e-materials.
Thank you. Operations, are there any other commenters in the queue?
Yes, Madam President, there are other callers in the queue.
Okay, would you put the caller through, the next one through, please?
Yes.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I would like to commend the library staff for all their hard work resuming library services. I believe labor should be highlighted as they work tirelessly to adapt back to the old pre-COVID public service models. Now that we've resumed library services, I want to acknowledge all the departments that have stepped up to help each other out and stepped in, from delivery services to mobile outreach. The staff has come through time and time again for our beloved patrons. I especially want to acknowledge the circulation staff, your frontline staff, who not are only serving you face to face, but behind the scenes, as Shelley's displayed here in this presentation, making sure the newest collections hit the shelves digitally or physically. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So much appreciated. Operations, are there any further commenters in the queue?
No, Madam President, no further callers.
Let's wait just a moment to see if anyone else calls in and maybe having a difficulty calling in. Operations, are there any other callers in the queue?
No, Madam President, no further callers at this time.
Okay, hearing that there's none, public comment on this item is closed. So we are now going to move into our commission discussion on item number 2. We have Shelley Cocking, who's available to the commission If you have a question, if you can now begin to use the hand raising functionality on the WebEx, that will be helpful for me so I can see which commissioners I can call upon. And while I'm monitoring that right now, and Shelley's in the queue, I also want to just acknowledge Shelley for that very thoughtful presentation. Here we go. I see him now. All right, I'm going to call on Commissioner Ono at this time. If you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I want to acknowledge what the second commenter said. The staff of the public library should be commended, not only for what you guys did during the pandemic, but also to get us to all of the branches being open. I was wearing a SFPL logoed item the other day to Trader Joe's, and I got a lot of comments, and one of the persons asked me, are all the branches open? I've been waiting. And I said, yes, I was proud to announce that all of them were open, and they were very happy. It's just been a great feeling to know that this your team is just amazing. And I also appreciate this presentation. It just amazes me on how much research and how much data we have been gathering and how positive all of the results have been. I would like to ask a question about the vendors and publishers that have helped out. If we could get the names, I would like to support them in any way I can, since they in turn helped out our library, but I'm sure they helped out other libraries across the nation. I also wanted to thank everyone who helped, all of the students that were in need, all of the youth that we helped through this difficult time and also going forward. So thank you very much, all of the staff and everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ono. Vice President Huang, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you. Shelley, thank you so much for the presentation. It's greatly appreciated. I do have one question and a set of comments for you in just a second, but of course wanted to echo, which I imagine everyone sort of raising their hands is going to echo the same, but what a long journey, right? And we have finally gotten to our branches reopening, and we're going to probably talk about it again during the City Librarians Report and item 4, but since it's already been brought up, thank you is the sort of the core of what I wanted to say. Shelley, I do have one question for you on the page with the BrainFuse usage chart. So this is the one with plotting 2 lines from roughly before February 2020 through end of May, it looks like, of 2020. My specific question is sort of just understanding the BrainFuse offering. So I think what's a little bit misleading about this this chart is that it feels like the database usage, which is the top line, is the quote unquote like the highest usage sort of format of BrainFuse. But when reading the definition of database usage, it says that one count in the database line refers to a page view, be it like a flashcard or skill surfer or test. And I imagine what that means is for every time we load one page, that's going to be counted as one. So therefore, like my originating sort of question was why there were such big spikes in that line. And I imagine in that just a single person going through, let's say, 300 flashcards in one session would generate 300 of the page views, in that it's not indicative of like a massive spike in usage across the entire city, but in fact it's just it could be just 1 or 2 people. I'm wondering if one, if that interpretation is correct, and 2, what is actually the main use case of BrainFuse? Is it the live tutor, or is it all of the sort of asynchronous content that's represented by the database usage line?
So to start, I think you are correct with your assumption there. I probably want to go back and confirm with the vendor, but that's how I interpret it as well. And the main use is for homework help. The experience is basically, I'm a student, I'm trying to do my math homework, I can't figure it out. And you get online and you talk to a tutor and they are helping you through this. And what they might offer at the time is some flashcards for you to help figure out how to do this type of problem or different resources. So the resources that they're accessing are coming from the interaction with the tutor. So does that
Gotcha.
explain things?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the important line is actually the live tutor line, and I guess like just to I guess one perhaps recommendation for the future when we report on this again is that perhaps the database line doesn't even need to be there, frankly, because the each sort of count in live tutor is like a higher touch sort of higher fidelity, like one-to-one interaction. The database is just like someone opens 10 pages and there goes 10, right? So I think it sort of buries the lead there, but thank you for clarifying. I think the other set of comments I had was regarding the circulation. I think this is actually like a really instructive view on looking at the 10-year circulation trend, FY11 to FY21. About just like the overall trend. I think we see this like not all too often, which is interesting. I think actually I would disagree with the public comment in that I think this chart and the 2-year view show why clearly e-circulation like forget the sort of argument around the relative importance between the two. It's very clear that e-circulation is just important, right? Like again, regardless of like relative to the physical circulation. I mean, the 2-year view clearly shows that during a time when physical access to material is completely affected, we can still do things online, right? And so it shows the ability for us to provide access to services, to material, even in the during a pandemic, which is critical, I think. And qualitatively, I've also heard such good feedback from people in my community around access to those materials. In terms of the long term, I think it's important to emphasize that if we were to simply look at the trend of circulation in the 10-year period from FY15 to FY19, discounting FY20 and 21 because of all the things that are sort of like affecting the physical circulation, the only thing keeping the overall circulation line up is in fact e-circulation, and it's doing that by combating the downward trend in physical circulation. So I think my overall read in this is that we are clearly investing in the right places. And again, not to discount any one particular format or another, but I think what I read from this is that we are providing what the public want in terms of the preferred way of accessing the material. And I think I'm extremely proud that we're able to do that. So all the sort of commitments in sort of planning the year-over-year strategy as we as we take this sort of step back view and factor in all the broader macro trends that are also affecting those decisions.
Thank you so much, Vice President Huang. I'm going to ask Commissioner Mall if you can unmute yourself. Thank you.
I'd like to echo everyone's congratulations and support of the staff through this difficult time. I know that before the pandemic, or in the before times, we were lending laptops. I wonder how the patrons, Shelley, could you answer that? Was there any access of laptops during this shutdown?
Well, the only access to laptops through us were when we loaned out, and maybe Michael can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 50 of our laptops that are normally in our vending machines. to help out with the hubs, the kids in the hubs.
Yeah.
Other city agencies were getting laptops out there. We partnered with the Housing Authority, and I heard from them that they actually bought computers or probably Chromebooks for the kids that lived in the housing units so that they could attend school. So there was other city agencies who were getting the technology into the hands of the kids. Parks and Recs did it through the hubs.
And that's wonderful. Really, it warms my
Yeah.
heart. And are the kids keeping those, or do they have to return them?
That's a good question. I'm assuming they got to keep them. I wouldn't expect that the Housing Authority would want them back. I know our loaner ones have to come back. Those were the ones that were being used in the hubs.
Yeah.
But I would expect that a lot of the other ones are staying with the kids.
I think I've mentioned this before in a commission meeting, but I, along with many other San Franciscans, was so disappointed and upset with the way the school district was handling the kids reopening back in their classes. And I'm so grateful that the library, along with other agencies, as you're describing, really stepped up to the plate, because it just kept breaking my heart what was going on in the school board with the school board situation.
Mhm.
Okay, having said that, I have another question. This is a simple question. Could you explain to me what Udemy is? I didn't quite get that.
So it's just an online academy kind of thing. It's basically online courses, and they have real trainers out there, and it's on all sorts of interesting topics. I actually used that one a lot because they had drawing classes on there. So when my kid was stuck at home, I have a 12-year-old who likes to draw, so I used that. And my husband learned how to use Pro Tools better, so he could record music. It's got a lot of really interesting things in there, rather than just business and helping your career. There's language courses. You can learn how to speak different languages. So,
and all these software programs are free.
Yes, as long as you have a library card, everything we offer is free.
Yeah. And Hoopla as well was.
Yes. Yeah.
Could you just describe a little more how Hoopla became like the library for the schools? I think you said that, but I didn't quite get it.
We did, yes. I can't really explain more how. I just can explain that I found out when we started to get a lot of kids reaching out to us trying to reset their PIN number. And then when we talked to them in that process, we discovered that San Francisco Unified School District decided that would be a great way. And I can understand, because if you use other ebook vendors, you have to get in a queue, like if you want to have 40 kids use the same book, you can't do that with Overdrive or Access 360, but Hoopla you can. So they had all their teachers tell their students about this product that we offer, and they started to use it. We saw massive increases in circulation in September of 2020, which kept going throughout the school year.
On a personal note, and feel free to not answer if you don't feel comfortable, is your son back in school?
Oh, my daughter. Yeah, actually.
Your daughter? Sorry.
Yeah, she got to go back last spring. We are in West Contra Costa, and her teacher was a rock star. He was the only 6th grade teacher in the school to come back. And he got all the kids who wanted to come in back in the classroom. So she spent 2 months in person last year and is back in person now too. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
And happily vaccinated, so I'm comfortable with it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner Mall. Commissioner Lopez, if you would unmute yourself now.
Yes, I just want to echo everything that everyone has said so far. And I just want to say that as a bilingual person and a bilingual advocate, I really appreciate the data that you show in terms of the languages that that people have been able to have access to. I'm really pleased with the information. I see a lot of resources, and then the map just definitely is a visual indication that we're serving our San Franciscan kids. So I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the information. I still need to go back and try to understand some of the graphs. I have to say that, but I get the main idea, and I appreciate everything that you and your staff have been doing. So thank you. I just wanted to say that.
Thanks.
Thank you so much as well, Commissioner Lopez, for your questions earlier that led to this presentation. And there's another hand that's up, and I think it might be Commissioner Wolf. Commissioner Wolf, I know you dialed in on a phone. Is your hand up right now?
It's not, but
okay. Would you like to say something?
Well, I just want to reiterate what everyone said, but also mention that as a firm believer in ebooks, it's been wonderful to have all these points of access, and just thank you to the incredible staff for their leadership and for pivoting so quickly and to constantly pivoting with all the different pressures applied to them. Really impressive and inspiring. So thank you.
Okay. I believe that is the end of our commission discussion. As I monitored, I do not see any other hands. And if somebody wanted to say something, they would probably interrupt me right now. So seeing that there's no other hands up, we're going to bring this item to a close. Thank you so much, Shelley. And I also want to thank those, make sure the message gets back to those in the analytics unit that was able to draw that information and pull it together. For those of you that are not aware, Michael, under his leadership, City Librarian Lambert, organized for the first time ever a data analytics unit that operates out of the city librarian's office. And in doing so, what he did was that he responded to the needs and desires of the commission to have better outcomes of what was happening. Not only not who only were we serving, but learning more about who those individuals are. And so this report that Shelley put together is really also an outgrowth of how that body of work has developed in the library. So thank you so much for the analytics unit and to City Librarian for his leadership on that. So we're going to now move on to our third item, which is about strategic planning. This is going to be good stuff. They're supporting documents already in your that you can find online. And I'm going to turn it over to the city librarian to introduce this piece for us.
Thank you, President Wardell. Library staff appreciates this opportunity to present information about a comprehensive strategic planning initiative that we'll be embarking on this year. I'm joined by CFO Heather Green, who will be co-presenting this evening. Next slide, please. And that was the cover slide. We can move to the next slide. Thank you. As context, earlier this year, the library's management team initiated steps to execute a comprehensive strategic planning process. We're fortunate the Library Commission approved funding for planning initiatives and consulting services as part of the FY19 and FY20 budgets. And we're now in a position to move forward with development of an updated strategic plan to carry us forward. Coming out of the past year plus of COVID-19, the timing could not be more optimal to engage in strategic planning work. Over the course of this past year, the San Francisco Public Library has been forced to adapt and innovate to meet the most pressing needs of our community at a time when our workforce was mobilized to serve as disaster service workers. As you just heard earlier from our Chief of Collections and Technical Services, a majority of our patrons' borrowing activity shifted this past year to digital collections. We've witnessed incredible participation in our virtual programs during a time when we were unable to deliver in-person programming. We've also seen the enormous disparities in our community widen and the effects of the digital divide on full display with the negative outcomes of distance learning for many youth. This was also a tremendous year of growth and development for our workforce who stepped up as disaster service workers. Library workers across the board supported the public health emergency response on the front lines through activations with the Department of Public Health, the Human Services Agency, the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing, the Department of Emergency Management, and other sections of the COVID Central Command. Many of these workers assumed leadership positions and continue to serve on extended deployments through this calendar year. This commitment to public service has presented a unique opportunity for the library to continue building the skill sets of these workers and optimizing their talents for continued innovation in public service and how we serve our community. Cumulatively, this activity has demonstrated the nexus points with other city departments and confirmed the need for greater interdepartmental work within the city and county of San Francisco to best serve our community. Next slide, please. As we embark on this strategic planning initiative, it's important to note that the San Francisco Public Library is one of the longest continuously running institutions in the city, founded in 1879. We will continue to anchor our neighborhoods. Our mission states that we're dedicated to free and equal access to information, to spreading the joys of reading and learning, and serving our diverse community. Our fundamental role will remain constant for generations to come, but the current environment presents an opportune moment to pause, reflect, engage our staff, our community, and audit our mission. Next slide, please. Pre-COVID, the library had been focusing on innovating our service model to be less transactional and more relational and experiential. We developed a vision around fostering shared experiences for a more connected community and witnessed tremendous growth and participation in library programs, events, and classes. Many of the specific goals and objectives were articulated in a 5-year strategic plan crafted in late 2015. Our familiar strategic priorities have served as the bedrock of this strategic plan and served us well as a framework for the past few years. More recently, we've developed our first departmental racial equity action plan with the initial phase 1 focusing on internal policies and practices, and the public-facing phase 2 yet to be developed in the coming weeks and months ahead. Next slide, please. As background, the previous 5-year strategic plan was developed at the direction of our late Mayor Ed Lee in 2015. As a department, when we look in the mirror, we can be very proud of what we see. We are the highest rated department of city government ever. The depth and breadth of our collections are unmatched. Our programming and services are incredibly robust. We're one of the largest free providers of high-speed internet in our community. When we drill down and look at this 5-year strategic plan, some of our notable achievements include the elimination of overdue fines, the completion of the open hours assessment in 2018, and the expansion to 7-day service system-wide in all of our branches. The initiation of the branch capital projects for Mission, Chinatown, and Ocean View. The Scholar Card Initiative, launched as part of President Obama's Library Card Challenge to public libraries and school districts. Our Service Excellence Initiative, and setting up a formal MOU with the Friends and Foundation of the San Francisco Public Library. Next slide, please. We have leveraged our familiar strategic priorities every year in the budget process, but also to fashion an annual work plan that our division chiefs leverage in their own goal-setting activities with their work units. Priorities for the current year include a focus on restoration of our pre-COVID hours of operation, in-person programming and services, supporting the economic recovery of San Francisco, continuing the work on our racial equity action plan, of course, continued progress with our branch capital projects, This strategic planning process in and of itself is a priority for the current fiscal year, as well as preparing for the Library Preservation Fund renewal. Next slide, please. As you know, more recently, we have focused on the development and implementation of our departmental racial equity action plan through the efforts of our Racial Equity Committee, with Maureen's leadership as our management team liaison and her strong support for the committee. Our Racial Equity Committee has successfully unveiled our Phase 1 Racial Equity Action Plan last December, and we've already made strides towards some of the goals and objectives included in that document. And we will continue to work towards building a Phase 2 Racial Equity Action Plan that will be externally focused on our programs and services. Next slide, please. And now I will yield to our CFO, Heather Green, to share more about the procurement process. Heather?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Michael, and good evening, commissioners. Thank you for having me here. A pleasure to be before you. I think we're just looking at slides. I'll turn off video and, I'm here to talk a little bit about what we've gone through and where we are, and as much as we can say about what will lie ahead. So here on the RFP Overview Slide, this is kind of the basics of what we called for. The introductory language to our RFP said we were seeking proposals for strategic planning services designed to advance racial equity, inclusion, and diversity. We gave proposers background about the library system, our previous plan, mission, existing facilities and studies. We emphasized the desire for a usable plan to inform service-driven, equity-minded programming and capital investments for the next generation. Up here, you can see in the second paragraph of the bullets there the structure of what we were looking for. We had some internal expertise about what these services could entail, and leveraging that, we described the expected scope in 5 components: outreach, communications, and engagement, qualitative and quantitative research, the actual plan documents, acknowledging project management in an effort like this as its own deliverable, very important, and then presentation support for the library and delivering presentations on the part of the vendor if needed to the stakeholders who need to understand what's going on. Section C there is the heart of the final deliverables, and that included, organization-wide 5-year goals and associated priorities, feasible strategies for SFPL to prepare for long-term future demand, including facility resilience needs, and a toolkit for continuous organizational improvement. You have on the slide there just the minimum qualifications. I'll come back to that in a little bit, but you can see here we were looking for people who know what they are doing and who can, hit the ground running when it comes to delivering the best possible work for the library. Next slide. So here on the RFP highlights, city contracting can be an incredibly dry business, but I'll take the opportunity to note, just because it helps me with the mission front and center, that our contracts advance some important social goods. Some of those goods are just baked into the city's process. For example, the requirement to reach out to local businesses and require that those businesses have, in this case, 20% of the contract's value, the recommended threshold. We have our 12B and 12X requirements. These are what say we do not engage with a company headquartered in a state with laws on the books that run counter to San Francisco's values when it comes to LGBTQ and abortion rights, or have company policies that keep benefits from partners based on their sexual orientation. We have our green purchasing requirements, which again push the power of the city's purse towards more sustainable ends. And then, so that's, all those are things that city contracting does day in and day out. And then we have the details of our scope, which we also specify to help advance our collective desired goals. So we know that outreach and engagement will be essential to the plan's success upon, both in development and upon implementation. And so in that first section A from the last slide, Our engagement scope included calling out the many stakeholders we need to engage, of course, commission, residents from all supervisorial districts, Council of Neighborhood Libraries, the Friends, SFUSD, and many government department partners as well, public health, HSA, environment, Office of Civic Engagement, Immigrant Affairs, many more, to ensure that the plan we put together through this process as best as possible serves San Francisco's greatest needs. And then, of course, in addition to SFPL leadership and staff whose input will be essential to giving us a plan that will work. We called for a communications plan and engagement strategy that include incentives for turnout and opinion giving from diverse populations, acknowledging that time is not so easy to come by for everybody. So we need to be really mindful and intentional about getting the voices in the room and to the table or through the survey, however they're going to do it. We asked for interviews, focus groups, and or workshops. We asked for surveys and perspective gathering tools that do not necessarily require in-person participation, but we also acknowledge the digital divide. And so it can't just be online. Like we asked for really, thoughtful consideration when it comes to making sure that the product that we get out of this process really represents the library, its patrons, its stakeholders, and people who don't yet use the library but could. That's, that growth piece is really important to us. Next slide. So here on the RFP timeline, this is the timeline of how the process has been going. Here and really through the whole thing, I need to say thank you to our contracts manager, Marcus Longa, who has done an amazing job shepherding this thing. Every contract's a beast, but when you're starting a fresh scope, it's especially challenging. So really thank you to him. You can see I've been working on it for a better part of, since I've been here, winter, spring 21 we started. We got the RFP out in April, got proposals in June, then our evaluation. I'll pause here to give some notes on the evaluation process. So there were written and oral evaluations. The panels included expertise from both within SFPL and without. That's by design and part of how the city ensures fair competition and that processes do not arbitrarily disadvantage or discriminate. So we had a really good range of knowledge and expertise represented, of course, internal from the library perspective, both SFPL and from outside library systems, representation from the library's Racial Equity Committee, from our RSA unit, Research Analysis Division, and the evaluator. We had evaluators with project management and consultant expertise. Someone from contracts monitoring, those are the people who work with our local businesses, an expert in resilience planning, project management. So it was a really good group. Proposers were evaluated in accordance with the criteria spelled out in the RFP for their team and business profile, their past work and experience, and of course their proposed approach. They were required to attest to no liability or lawsuits on the books, and also to their availability to commence work upon project start, because we really want to hit the ground running, like I said. The minimum qualifications we had up on a past slide, at least 3 similar plans in the last 10 years, with at least 1 for a public sector client, and then project lead with minimum 10 years experience in the field. Oral interviews included a sample community facilitation and engagement exercise and a presentation on the most relevant past experience and lessons learned. There were 4 qualifying bids and 3 made it through to orals. The 3 highest were stated in the RFP to make it through to orals. And my understanding is that the panels were impressed with the quality of all 3. That speaks again to the quality of Marcus's work and our colleagues at CMD, and also to Michael and Maureen and all of you for creating such a wonderful system. We got the sense, I think, that people were really excited to work for San Francisco, and we were able to get multiple strong proposals for the work ahead. Okay, so where are we now? We have issued a notice of intent to award as it shows here, but the contract has not yet been executed. It's still August, we're not yet behind. We'd like to get going as soon as possible. We are ironing out the last insurance detail. I'm optimistic that it will work out with the highest scoring bidder, But it's just very important that we all understand that the discussion of content and what we expect now is completely contingent on the contract being finalized. I wish it wasn't so, but contracts, do fall through in the 11th hour. So, we understand there's appetite to learn more about this initiative. It's an important one. We're excited about it. And so we have some information here for you on the highest scoring proposal. We're excited about it. It's just not a done deal yet. And so please keep that in mind. And of course, we would update you if anything changes from here. But like I said, I'm optimistic. So with that, a little bit of a view. Next slide. On our highest scoring proposer, they've received notice of intent to award. That's DTUI, a local business enterprise with subcontractors Margaret Sullivan, Smith Group, and a couple of micro LBE collaborators. So DTUI, they are an LBE themselves, so that's very exciting. You can see they give, this is an excerpt from the proposal. They gave us a proposed constellation of roles and responsibilities, plenty of overlapping skills. So I'm trying to summarize that so you can get a sense for who's doing what. So DTUI is the prime. They bring expertise in community organizing, facilitation, engagement, and they know San Francisco very well, being based here. Margaret Sullivan Studios is an expert in libraries and their service design, a real thought leader. The library experts named on the team have collaborated with dozens of public library systems, focus on major urban systems, including those in Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, and Las Vegas. And Smith Group brings a project management and design skill set. All of these, I thought it was nice, all of these groups want to show that they share a commitment to authentic engagement, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion values, and strengths-based thinking. This team proposed to deliver a bold, inspirational vision for a just, prosperous, and equitable San Francisco, a confident mission for SFPL to lead a values-driven social infrastructure and community economic development strategy centering all, values designed for radical inclusion, listening, and learning, recommendations for a next practice organizational operating system that embeds coalition building and community feedback in daily practice, and strategy designed in collaboration with community for amplified social impact. Next slide. And here on the anticipated content slide, in the TARPR, you can see their proposed deliverables. Again, a snapshot from the proposal. The planning documents themselves, appendices. We asked in the RFP that we get strong documentation of the process so we can capture, ideas and how everything went, so to be transparent and so people can walk back through those shoes if they're interested in how we came up with the ideas. Toolkits for us to, continue our own work for continuous improvement, and a field guide. For us to, a roadmap, how we actually get from the ideas to the execution. We think that these deliverables would help prepare SFPL for the service-driven, equity-minded programming and capital investments we need to meet the needs of tomorrow. We know we need libraries to be more than repositories for free, accessible physical and digital materials. Libraries are expected to serve as community centers for education, digital access, civic engagement, and to meet the diverse learning needs of overlapping communities. Libraries have become a communal third place for all generations and an access point for technology and information, of course. So, we are excited that this highest scoring proposer has, speaks a lot of the same language as we do here in San Francisco, and understands that libraries are changing and is excited about envisioning that kind of new future. We also, need to acknowledge, as we have kind of throughout today, how much COVID has changed our context. We are in a context of accelerating change now on all fronts, it seems, as we all breathe in the smoke. And so between COVID and climate, we've got a lot of fast work to do. We need to continue to be responsive and acknowledge and embrace the diversity of needs across San Francisco, our patron base and would-be patrons. And, when we think about our resilience, what role can libraries play to help our communities literally now weather and recover from acute shocks and chronic stresses? Next slide. So this just lays out high-level next steps. So again, this is next steps once a contract is finalized, which I hope will be soon. We have formal project management going here, which is great. So that means there's formal project kickoff. And the purpose of said type of meeting is to get stakeholders together, map the schedule, establish the roles, the communication channels and cadence and protocols, establish the oversight of the consultants, clarify the deliverables. We have so much scheduling ahead of us. We have nobody's missed anything. All of that is to come. But we look forward to the many opportunities for our staff and for you commissioners and our public to participate as stakeholders in this futurist project. We hope that the lion's share of the work will be done this fiscal year. The contract is longer. We have 2 years in the body of the contract to allow for, things that may carry on. But we're going to set the deliverable schedule for late spring, early summer. And I think that is my last slide.
Thank you, Heather.
Sure, back to Michael.
Next slide, please. Commissioners, this strategic planning initiative seeks to develop a bold vision for the future and refine our strategic priorities for meeting community needs and improving the quality of life for San Francisco residents. For the past couple of decades, the library has been dealing with dramatic shifts in how our community consumes information and engages with our institution. Our staff and our community will play critically important roles in providing input and helping to shape the direction of the San Francisco Public Library to provide library services to our community. The Library Commission will also play a key leadership role, representing the San Francisco Public Library, helping to tell our story, participating in community engagement and employee engagement activities, of course, sharing your own input, and ultimately allocating the resources in future budget cycles to actualize the strategies. This is an exciting time and the perfect time to embark on this process. We are at the earliest stages of planning to design the process, and I look forward to sharing regular updates with the Commission as we pick up the pace in the coming weeks, schedule the rollout, and ultimately work to craft a strategic plan that will serve as our framework for the next few years. And that concludes this presentation. The management team is more than happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Very robust, very full presentation. While we're continuing to take that in, we're going to move into our public comment on this item of strategic planning services. And I'm going to move over to operations to see if there are any callers currently in the queue.
Yes, Madam President, we have a caller in the queue.
Would you put the caller through, please?
Yes, of course. Call in user 10, your 3 minutes starts now.
Peter Warfield here, Executive Director, Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com and P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California. I'm hearing a message from the system. The raise. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you.
The system interrupted me about the raised hand status being lowered. If you could please give me extra time, I'd appreciate it. Will you do that?
We can reset your time. Operations, make sure he gets 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes from starting now.
Go ahead, Peter.
Is that right?
Mr. Warfield, you can continue.
How much time do I have left?
You have 3 minutes starting now.
Thank you. I won't repeat what I said about identification, but that's part of what I have to say. I'm not sure why the system was interrupting me to say that the raised hand status has been lowered and so on and so forth. All of these messages are inaudible and invisible, as far as I can tell, to anybody else other than the actual person making public comment. I'm very disappointed that the process seems to have been so closed. I don't recall any discussion about the preparation of the RFP, what should be in there, what is the library looking for, what is the commission looking for, what do librarians think or want in a strategic plan, and what does the public? I think this whole process needs to be much more clearly and obviously public. Since you weren't too specific about which documents you were referring to, there were 5 documents with over 65 or more pages involved. Let me just comment on some of them. The existing 5-year plan, I don't recall, let's just say I think it's been weak on evaluation. For example, goal 3 on page 5 of the current plan says, for fiscal 2021, conduct a comprehensive assessment of library collections to ascertain areas for enhancement and improvement. I don't recall anything like that happening in any public place or way. Evaluate on page 12, evaluate cumulative impact of fine and fee changes. That's for 2021. I don't recall that either. So I'm not clear where the past strategic plan has gone, and it's troubling to me that there has, as I said, been what seems to be so little public nature to the preparation, to the issuance, to the evaluation of folks to do this, and to the selection finally. You talk a lot about equity, and all of that is fine and good as goals, but you don't do the simplest things, and you don't seem to pay attention, for example, the 100,000 plus people who don't have access to the internet and in this city, according to a mayor's digital equity strategic plan appendix. And that means a lot of people simply don't have the wherewithal, especially with COVID, to participate in the online programs and non-book materials. And you're not interested, apparently, in taking that into serious account, especially with your programming. Those are things that need to be incorporated, as well as the value of books, which have been determined in a variety of ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Operations, are there any further commenters in the queue?
No, Madam President, no further callers.
Let's just wait a moment to see if anyone else will be able to call in. Operation, is there any callers in the queue?
Yes, Madam President, we have a caller in the queue.
Thank you. Would you put the caller through, please?
Yes. Caller Michael, your 3 minutes starts now.
Hi, this is Michael Ulrich, and this is for Michael Lambert. You mentioned a vision of the library building off of the collaboration with other city departments that it did during the pandemic. Can you expand more on this vision?
At this particular time, this is a public comment only for the caller. And so at this particular time, we're just only receiving public comment. It's not a response period. But thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Operations, are there any further commenters in the queue?
Yes, Madam President, we have another caller in the queue.
Thank you. Would you put the caller through, please?
Yes.
Hi. Hi, this is Marcial. I'm calling in. I just wanted to say that I'm excited to participate in this effort. And as the first caller before me, I'm hoping that this strategic plan can address some of those issues that were brought up, because I do think that the library, especially the staff, wants to move towards what our patrons want. So I'm excited about this, and I'm thankful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Operations, are there any further commenters in the queue?
No, Madam President, no other callers.
Okay. Hearing that there's none, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment on item 3. And we're now going to move into our commission discussion. This is a discussion item. There's no action to be taken. Commissioners have both our city librarian as well as our chief financial officer available to provide the support to their questions as well as their commentary. And at this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Wolf if she would unmute herself.
Thank you. Thank you for the very thorough presentation. It was really informative and very helpful. I appreciate all the effort that went into this from the staff to make sure it was a fair and equitable process. Michael, I want to just remind you that we chose you and to be our leader because of your big vision. And so this is a very exciting moment for you to really embrace that. And I'm excited to see how it all plays out because you really do have a big vision and you are an incredible leader. And this is a moment for you to really lead the staff and the community in an effort that will result in big impact. So I look forward to that. I also know that the library has a history nationally of being a leader, of taking risks, of being bold. And I want to be sure that this process does not create too many obstacles to allow those kinds of opportunities to emerge and to be taken advantage of given the uncertain times in which we live. I think that the strategic plan really has to accommodate so much uncertainty as we move forward because there's no guarantee of anything, as we've learned over the last 18 months. Just when you think things are going to go one direction, they turn to a different direction. So I just want to be sure that the plan has some flexibility. But it'll be exciting, Michael, for you to really be part of thinking this through and your bold vision, because that's why you're here and why we so support you and respect your leadership. I think what I'd like to know a little bit more of is what role will we be playing as commissioners and how can we support this effort and be good stewards in our role to ensure that the library is moving on course, and how can we offer our perspectives in this process?
Thank you for the support, Commissioner Wolf. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the question. The Library Commission is really in a unique position to support this effort. Not only are you appointed by the mayor as our governing body and, officers of the city serving as library commissioners, that gives you a unique internal leadership role as internal stakeholders, but you also are residents of the city and county of San Francisco. So you also bring that external stakeholder perspective. As far as your contributions, I briefly touched upon this earlier, but it is your role to represent the San Francisco Public Library throughout this process. We do envision you will participate in our employee engagement initiatives, our community engagement initiatives throughout the process, help tell the library story, communicate our mission, but also, just as important, provide your own feedback and input during the process. So there will be lots of opportunity for the Library Commission to participate. Of course, we will be bringing regular updates to the Library Commission at our Library Commission meeting. So that's another opportunity for you to provide your feedback throughout the process.
Thank you. I just want to say that I can only speak for myself, but I suspect other members of my fellow commissioners might agree with me in saying that we want to participate, we want to be part of the process, or at least I do, to be sure that it is a plan that we can all embrace and be excited about and ensure the ongoing success of the library, not only locally, but nationally. So we look forward to the participation and the updates. And again, Michael, you are here because you have a bold and big vision, and we're looking forward to that leadership moving forward.
Thank you. I'll do my best.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Wolf. Let's have Commissioner Lee. We haven't heard from Commissioner Lee this evening. If you can unmute yourself, please.
Yes, you have not heard from me, but I've been very, very attentive to what's going on.
Of course, you always are attentive.
Thank you. Thank you for your vote of confidence. The last agenda item, everyone said, and I have nothing to add, so I might as well keep silent. Anyway, coming back to this agenda item, I enjoy this whole package that I've read it, and it's done very well. From the number of strategic plans that I have played a part in my life, this comes close to the best. Having said that, for example, I would say that with the 2022 to 2027, the 7 priorities, I agree. Because then once we have got the scope there in agreement, then at least we can go forward and therefore have these consultants to be able to help us to facilitate and build the strategic plan. And as Connie Wu said that, Michael, you have got lots of bold ideas, and I look forward to seeing many of these bold ideas will come through. Having said that, I also like to comment on that what specifically that I like in many of the things, the process as well. The process I really appreciated with these qualifying ones, the amount of thoroughness, and it is just marvelous. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I also like, it is the 4 specific deliverables. I can't wait till June to see the full extent of it. Those 4 deliverables are wonderful. It will contain many of the content. Having said all that, there is one thing that I'm a little puzzled, and perhaps Heather can enlighten me. Is that particular slide with the 3 sort of one overlapping? And when I read that and I see earlier on, it says that the TTUI is the one to go to have the contract awarded with Margaret Sullivan as a subcontractor, I assume, be part of it. And then there is the Smith Group being the project manager. So who in the end of the 3 sort of entities that we are going to hold them accountable for coming through with all this wonderful stuff?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Commissioner. I'm happy to speak to that as best as I understand it, having read the proposal documents, but not participated in the evaluation. But so the contract goes to DTUI as the prime. So from a contract accountability perspective, they are accountable for making sure that the subs they have partnered with do what they're supposed to do. But I think that the way that I understand the relationship between these vendors is that, and it's in the proposal, you'll see that I think they tried, because they have so many overlapping skills, I think they were trying to be extra clear about who was lead on which aspects, because I think several of them could be lead on multiple parts. So there is in the proposal kind of a clear, it's like a spreadsheet looking graph that is in your supplementary materials that shows who's, kind of lead for each aspect of the work as envisioned. Of course, it'll get refined in practice. And so I think they're trying to give us really clear signals about who we should ask for what component of the work. But my expectation is that the person they identify in the PM role once we get started, so that person should be responsible for riding the horses and getting them all going in the same direction. So that person should be responsible for the day-to-day communications and giving us the project status and being able to answer our questions about who's doing what. And we'll want that clear point of communication that gets named though at the kickoff. So, we'll have a conversation then to just know exactly whom we should email with like logistical questions. But from a contract perspective, it's DTUI is the prime, and they sign, our contract terms apply to the arrangement, right? So everybody's responsible in that way. And then, we'll see who the actual like individual is who PMs.
So hearing what you said, does it mean that DTUI in some way is a general contractor and the others are the subcontractors?
Or construction. Yeah, it's similar
like in
to
the
that.
construction one.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the end, you will need to hold one party accountable. Otherwise, three parties would be pointing each way when things go south.
That's right. It's not an ambiguous relationship. Like they are the prime and they have subs. So yeah, it is kind of similar.
Great. Sorry that I seem to be worrying too much, but I just gain an understanding because a lot of project goes south is because of not managing the risk. And there's a big risk item.
That's, it's definitely something to the structure, right? We have a team that has a lot of pieces, and I think that's important. I think it's clear where the subject matter expertise lies when it comes to library systems. Like that's very clear, right? And so, with the people who have done this for dozens and dozens of libraries. So I think they are, partnered up with smartly a firm with strong local knowledge and like the community credibility that will help, make their work especially successful in San Francisco if it all goes through.
Great, thank you. I look forward to playing whatever role that I can play in making this a wonderful success. And I look forward to seeing the secrets between Michael, our chief librarian, 2 years.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And thank you as well to Heather for that very thoughtful response. I've monitored, I don't see any other hands up. And so not seeing any other hands up in our commission discussion, I just want to say thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much, Heather Green. It's very exciting. And as Commissioner Wolf has already stated quite clearly, as San Francisco goes in public library, so goes the rest of the nation. I've been a witness to hearing from libraries that have been inspired and have adapted policy as well as practices that were first launched, ideated, and implemented in San Francisco. It has happened over and over and over again. This is not something that is we just say. It actually is been well documented. So actually the North American libraries, urban libraries, look to San Francisco for leadership. They actually, I've heard other library directors, CEOs actually say that. They expect San Francisco will be the city and the library that steps out on key issues, even when the waters are uncharted. So we expect nothing less than the legacy that we already have, and that legacy will continue. So thank you so much for this very thoughtful strategic planning services, and more to come on that. So now we're going to move on to our next item on our agenda, which is the City Librarian's Report. And this is the item for the City Librarian to give us information and a report out of recent library activities and make announcements. So I'll turn it over to our City Librarian.
Thank you, President Wardell. We have a number of reports this evening, and I am pleased to introduce our first presenter. Our Chief Operating Officer, Maureen Singleton, is here to be responsive to the request we had at the last commission meeting about a report on our elevator modernization project. Maureen?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Commission, for this opportunity to provide an update on the main library elevator modernization project. As Michael mentioned, I am the library's Chief Operating Officer, and I will give you an overview of the project as well as an update on where we are so far. Next slide, please. As many of you know, the main library opened in April of 1996, which means that our elevators are over 25 years old. The purpose of the elevator modernization project was to increase the reliability, performance of our public and staff elevators, as well as to reduce some of our maintenance costs. The scope of the program included modernizing all 7 passenger elevators here at the main library, of which 5 are public and 2 are staff elevators. A sister project to that is upgrading the main library's fire alarm control panel, because those 2 systems need to be able to speak to each other in the event of an emergency. The total budget for this program is $5.55 million. Next slide, please. On this slide, you're going to see a map of the library elevators here at the main library. And just to give you some orientation, it aligns with the streets that surround the main library. So Grove, Larkin, Fulton, and Hyde. In there, you see that we have, again, those 7 elevators for the main library. Elevators 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 are the public elevators, and 5 and 6 are the staff elevators. Next slide, please. So to give you a little bit more information on the key deliverables associated with this program, I wanted to highlight some information for you. All of this effort started off with an initial site survey that we asked the Department of Public Works to coordinate for us. They reached out to Siska Hennessy, which is an experienced elevator consultant, to do a site survey to tell us what the state of our elevators is, and then to recommend an actual project scope. And what they recommended for us was a modernization versus other types of elevator upgrades. What a modernization really means is it's replacing the used and obsolete equipment so that we are putting in new systems that have contemporary technology and design. Also, as part of this project, we are installing new door operators, suspension ropes. We're replacing the elevator cab flooring and wall panels. We're installing modern energy efficient elevator button panels. And again, the reference to the fire alarm panel, control panel upgrade. That panel was actually installed at the main library during construction in 1995. So much like our elevators, it's at a point where we need to replace obsolete or items that are at the end of their useful life. So the manufacturer, which is Siemens, is in the process of working with Public Works and the library to install new panels which are compatible with all of our fire life safety systems, and will continue to be able to communicate with our smoke detectors, fire alarm pull stations, and notification devices. This is a large project, as you can imagine, to coordinate, and so there was a multi-part project management team. At the very high level in Public Works, you have 2 key members, Andy Sohn, the architect, and our architectural associate, John Paolini. As I mentioned already, we had an elevator consultant, Siska Hennessy, and then the actual construction work is overseen by our general contractor, Bueller Commercial Construction, and our subcontractor on the elevator specific side is Kone. Within the library itself, our team included administration, engineering, and the chief of the main library. Next slide, please. So on this slide, it is a chart that shows you the general schedule of the elevator program. It's broken out by each of the elevators, 1 through 7, and then the rough timeline. Here you can see the overarching program runs from May of 2021 to December of 2021. As far as the color coding that you're seeing in this high-level scope schedule, anything that's in that kind of peach orangey color is the time period where the actual modernization work is happening. And anything that's in green is when the elevators are in operation. So just to illustrate that a little bit more, I'm going to walk you through an example or two. So if you look at the first row that says elevator 1, which is again a public elevator, you see for the period of May 2021 through about mid-August 2021, it's that peach color. So this is when the renovation or the modernization effort is happening, and it will become operational for the public again in August. If you take a look at elevators 3, 4, and 7, which are also public elevators, you can see that they were in that orange phase from May through mid-June, and they are currently in the green phase, which means they're operational for the public. You'll see here that the last elevator that's going to enter into the modernization work phase is elevator 5, which is a staff elevator. And it's sequenced to start after the other staff elevator modernization work is complete. And that is for obvious reasons, so that we make sure that we have different staff elevators available to move materials throughout the library without utilizing public elevators for that space. Next slide, please. On this slide, you're going to see a similar chart that walks us through the current status of the projects, the various elevators. Here you're going to see, again, the reference to each one of the specific elevators, 1 through 7. It indicates for you as a point of reference the location, the status of the project, when it was returned to service or anticipated to return to service, and if we've done any stress testing as part of the overarching project management and preparation to put elevators back into service. So again, I'm going to walk through a couple examples so you know exactly how to read this chart. If you look at the first row for elevator 1, the location is in the lobby. This elevator also eventually will serve the Talking Book Braille Center, which is on the 2nd floor. It is not operational right now to the public, and that's because it's undergoing the modernization work. We had originally anticipated when we issued this explanatory document that it would be operational and back in use for the public on August 10th, but currently is actually anticipated to be operational for the public next week on August 23rd. There was a slight delay in some materials being received in time for the key card component for the staff area that's associated with the Talking Book Braille Center and the lower level. So we are working on that, but it will be open and operational to the staff, or to the public rather, on this Monday. And we will be doing stress testing prior to opening to the public. So it's actually ongoing right now. Those elevators, that elevator's also been inspected by the state. So anything that goes back into operation for the public or for our staff has to be inspected by the state. And that is something that Public Works will coordinate for us. Again, just as another example, if you look at elevators 3 and 4, those are also located in the lobby. You may remember that from the map that I showed a couple slides back. Those 2 elevators also serve the Children's Center on the 2nd floor. They're operational. They became available to public use on June 10th, and the stress testing is complete. And then I'll just reiterate that the final elevator that will go through the modernization work is elevator 5. And it is anticipated that that work will be done by the end of December. And of course, we will do stress testing on that as well. So I'm just going to finish up this presentation with a couple pictures of some of the work that's been going on to give you a sense of the kind of things that have been going on or that you should anticipate seeing once you are writing in the modernized elevators. So next slide, please. So here you can see just the one elevator is cordoned off because the work is happening deep inside there by our Kone experts. On the other side, you see kind of the brains of the elevators. This is on the lower level at the main library. So a lot of work goes into upgrading these. These are complex machines, and there's a huge amount of work that's going on to modernize the whole program. Next slide, please. And here's just a snapshot. One is of the inside of an elevator with the new flooring and the new wall panels that are meant to be more durable and more easily replaced if and when they're damaged. And then the other picture is just an exterior shot of two of the elevators as they were going through their modernization effort. Next slide, please. Okay, that actually concludes the update and overview on the elevator modernization project here at the main library. With me today, if you have technical questions that I'm not able to answer, I have Andy Sohn and John Paolini with us, and we'll be available to answer any questions after public comment on the City Librarian's report. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Maureen. Next slide, please. All right, it really brings me joy to tee up this next presentation. This is an update on the SFPL reopening plan. And this evening we have our Chief of the Main Library, Tom Fortin, joined with our Assistant Chief of Branches, Rebecca Alcala-Veraflor. Our Chief of Branches is on a well-deserved vacation, so Rebecca will be representing this evening, and I will turn it over to Tom.
And I just want to start by saying kudos to whoever selected that photo for this slide. That is the best photo ever in terms of the reopening plan. So thank you for that. And thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, commissioners. I am Tom Fortin, Chief of the Main Library, here to share a few quick updates on the phased reopening at the Main. Next slide, please. Our big news is that the Main will be resuming regular service hours Tuesday, September 7th, when we will again be open for evening hours. Our open hours will be Mondays 9 to 6, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays 9 a.m. until 8 p.m., Fridays 12 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 6, and Sundays 12 to 6. We are also planning to make meeting rooms at the Main available again in September. Details will be posted on the SFPL website, and interested community groups can contact the Chief of Main office for more information. And July 28th marked the most recent milestone in the Main's reopening when the Friends Bookstore opened again for service in the Grove Street entrance area. I have spoken with a number of patrons who were particularly happy about this, as a visit to the store is part of their normal routine when they visit the Main Library. And the Friends hope to restore their very popular Wednesday step sales on the Larkin Plaza later this fall. Next slide, please. And thanks to the staff in our research strategy and analytics department who have run recent reports on visitorship and circulation of physical items at the Main Library. Taking a look at the stats for visits, the Main is currently averaging above 1,100 patrons per day, and you will notice the big jump in attendance after June 14th, and that's when we opened the upper floors for service. Comparing back to pre-pandemic July of 2019, we're at about 30% of previous visitor numbers right now. Next slide, please. Looking at circulation of physical items, you can see that the stats are moving up month by month, and in July, patrons checked out about 45,000 items from the Main's shelves. Looking back to July of 2019, our pre-pandemic circulation was over 87,000. So we're running about 50% of typical circulation right now, and are looking forward to those numbers continuing to grow as we resume our regular service hours in September. Next slide, please. And now with more news on reopening, I'll turn it over to Rebecca from the Chief of Branches office.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm very pleased to be here today. My name is Rebecca Alcalá Veraflor, and I am the Assistant Chief of Branches, and I will be sharing some updates on our branch-based reopening. Slide, please. So I'd like to share with you just a little bit more of where we've been and understand what our plan is. And doing that, we're going to start with where we are with the staffing snapshot. So as you can see here, we have some vacancies that we are addressing currently. So we have 5 branch manager vacancies. We have a recruitment that's moving through the process right now. We have 25 librarian vacancies, 17 of which just finalized interviews today. So we are hopeful that those will be filled soon. We have 2 technical assistant 1 vacancies that are also going to move through the process. We actually just finished a recruitment and hired 3. So those, we used to have 5, now we only have the 2. It's very excited about that. We have 8 library assistants, and we have these 33 library page vacancies. And again, I have an update. One of our employees who had resigned from the library came back. So that number is actually at 32. And it's very exciting for our team. He's a very well-liked colleague of ours, and we're happy to have him back. We're also in the process of recruiting for those page positions. They're critical to being able to open our additional services. And then of course, we've got our long-term district service, disaster service workers who've been helping the city in their combating of COVID, the pandemic, and just being so supportive to us as a city in moving out of this. All right, let's see. So in order for us to really be able to move forward with reopening this staffing complement, this is what we're really trying to address. In August, we had 19 positions, 19% of the positions were vacant, and it impacts each branch a little differently. So a couple of branches have none to very small vacancies, while other branches were impacted greatly and have about 40% vacancy. So for this reason, we're going to take a phased approach with the goal of restoring our 7-day service over the next few months. So slide, please. So let's take a look at where we've been and where we are. So it's been, as you can see here, it's been a year of public service. We started in August, SFPL to go at the Excelsior branch. And then we moved into SFPL to go pretty much almost every month. And here we are, August, with all of our branches, minus Mission Branch that is still undergoing renovation. So our 26 branches are live for the public. We're so excited to have Merced be our last branch to open on this past Tuesday. I know it warms all of our hearts to have that. Let's see, next slide, please. All right, so again, also to our team here with the research and analytics, our information about our daily number of visitors since opening. Since opening, we've had 123,000 patrons back. And if we're looking at an average daily number between over 7 days, 8/5 to 8/11, August 5th to August 11th, we had over 3,225 visitors on average. So those are great numbers to see of in-person patrons. Next slide, please. And then of course, our circulation, our number of items checked out. So as you can see here, we've got branches have circulated over 405,000 materials since May. August circulation is expected to reach 180,000, which is about 30,000 increase from July. And I know we've got a lot of families out there, mine included, who are getting picture books by the dozens. So it's very exciting. Okay, next slide, please. And here is the exciting part. I want to share with you some of our photos of our teams going back into service. So here we have our Park Branch team, which launched on August 3rd in our very beautiful Park Branch. Next slide. And West Portal in-person service also launched on August 3rd. And there you see our chief at the front of the line there, Kathy Del Neo. We all did great work in getting together and posing, but also setting it up for success. So everyone's just really excited. Next slide, please. Our Ingleside in-person service launched on August 9th. This is a smaller branch of staff, but a strong branch staff. They were so excited and all smiles when I went to visit them. And so yeah, just loved having the little students come back in from their preschool. Next slide, please. Oh, and here is our North Beach in-person service. Picture Day, August 9th, also launched. At the front, we've got Richard Lee here, who's the branch manager there. And we also have the rest of the team. And at the tail end there, we have Genevieve Feldman, who's our district manager for the Northeast. And this team just did a wonderful job with bringing this back to in-person service. This was a hub during the pandemic. And so returning it back to library service was no small feat. Next slide, please. And our Sunset branch, there at the front next to me, that's me in a mask, you can't tell, but that's me and I'm smiling, is Regan Gong, who is our Northwest District Manager, and towards the top, or no, right behind me is Wing Chan, who is our branch manager at the Sunset branch. And like we had people lined up ready to come in and families lined up ready to come into the branch when we opened. So very heartwarming. Next slide, please. And the welcome back, the cutting of the ribbon at the Anza branch. And here's our team. There were so many families there, just excited to come back into their neighborhood branch. And you can see the team here is also equally excited. And they really did cut the ribbon, just so you're aware. Next slide, please. And here's our Marina branch, also a team that worked hard to do SFPL to go and then in-person service. So here they are welcoming everybody back in on August 10th. Next slide, please. Portola branch, very festive. They were all smiles when I arrived and just anxious, excited. There were butterflies and bellies and they just couldn't wait. They did a great job setting it up. There's also another photo that we've shared in their garden, which is gorgeous. Their garden produces fruit and veggies. So here they are, just really thrilled to be opening, and we clapped for the folks that came in on August 10th. Next slide, please. And here we go, Potrero on the Hill. The families there were also equally excited to come in and enjoy their branch. It's a beautiful branch and draws a lot of the neighbors. It's, you know, many of them walk to the branch, so I was really excited to have them open up again. Next slide. And as I mentioned earlier, on Monday, Golden Gate returned to in-person service. So we have many photos that didn't quite make it to this slide, but we've been sharing that out on social media. I hope you take a look at those. It was a fun day of welcoming people back in. Actually, we signed up a new family for a library card and a little, his son got his card, got his book bundle because he was K through 2 age group, and he got his bag for summer stride and just was new neighbors, new library card holders, happy as could be. And then next slide, please. And of course, our Merced branch, which tied us up with a nice little bow On August 17th, balloons galore, displays everywhere, and happy faces. And again, due to when they opened, we didn't quite get all of the photos. We didn't get the photos into the slide, but again, they're on social media and you can find them there. Next slide, please. So thank you for joining me on that picture trip. So, our goal had been to go full service 5 days in the 26 branches, and we completed that on July 20th. By going full service for 5 days per week in 26 branches was completed on August 17th. Our next goal is to reopen all branches for full service 7 days per week. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to take some work on our part to get there, but that's our goal. The branch division has set this to happen by early of 2022. We hope to launch the first 7-day branches in early fall, followed by additional launches in November and December. They remain flexible as our staffing levels continue to evolve. And I would say we're in the process of engagement with staff on what we're going to do, what we're planning, what this would mean, and what it would look like. We are so appreciative of the care and dedication that teams of staff in each branch has continued to put forward serving the public. The past year has been a challenging one, and the branch staff have continually impressed me with their resilience and service-focused attitude. We are very glad to be back doing what we do best, providing library service to the communities in our branch libraries. We appreciate the help and support we have received from colleagues in other divisions, and we appreciate the support of the Commission and the Friends of the Library and all of the community members. It's just been so great and wonderful. So, mil gracias, 1,000 thank yous. And that's it for me.
Mi gracias too. Oh my goodness. What a 17 months it has been, going from complete shutdown to gradual rebuild. This has really tested us as an institution, but I'm just so proud of the staff and how we came together as an SFPL family. Certainly all the support that the Library Commission has provided, our partnership with our labor partners, our friends and foundation of the San Francisco Public Library, the patience and understanding and loyal patronage of our community. There's just so much gratitude and love in this moment. This is a critical milestone in our institution's history, getting all of our locations open again for in-person service. So I just want to thank everybody that has supported the library throughout this time period. And with that, we can transition to the next slide. Our closer today is our Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships, Michelle Jeffers, with an exciting report on Viva, our Latinx Heritage Month. Michelle?
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for having me here to talk about this year's Viva Latinx Heritage Month programming. Although I have an amazing slate of programs, it is hard to be the closer after Rebecca's exuberant presentation. So thank you very much. So as always, the library looks so forward to honoring the culture, history, art, and literature, and celebrating the diversity of our community. The annual National Heritage Month, as you may know, runs from mid-September through mid-October, and our programs will carry through both months as well. I'm also proud to note that Viva is giving us a chance, we hope, fingers crossed, to tiptoe back to a little bit of in-person programming. We have just a couple of in-person events planned, and I'm looking forward to seeing our library users be able to gather together in and outside of our spaces. Next slide, please. We kick it off on September 15th with artist Alejandro Ramirez leading an art workshop for children and teens that will teach us to draw birds and our own stories in the style of El Salvador's national artist, Fernando York. We will also celebrate the independence of Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. On October 13th, I should note, Alejandro will be back to offer a workshop on Guatemalan-inspired kite art. On September 18th, we'll get tweens and teens moving with a reggaeton dance class taught by an award-winning Chilean choreographer named Sandro Alvarez. On September 22nd, we'll have Oakland multicultural artist Rachel Ann Palacios, who will teach youth how to make their own shield or chamale and learn about the Aztec Empire. And on October 6th, we offer a class on hot chocolate traditions from Latin America that features our own Spanish language staff member, Joana Arteaga Lespina. Next slide, please. For children's literature, we bring forth Chantal Acevedo and Dono Barba Higuera. They are members of the author collective Las Musas, and they'll be here on September 29th. They'll discuss the cultural elements present in their middle grade books, and we'll talk about what inspires them and what advice they have for young writers. Then on October 13th, we bring poet, educator, and activist Leticia Hernandez Linares to talk about her first bilingual picture book for children, Alejandra Fights Back. It's about a young girl who fights to save her urban neighborhood. Leticia will be joined by Oakland artist Robert Louis Trujillo, who illustrates the book. And this book is part of the Rise Home Stories project, which is a collaboration between storytellers and social justice advocates who work at the nexus of housing, land, and racial justice. Next slide, please. For adults, this is one of our very first in-person events in 17 months. This will be on September 15th, a lunchtime post-pandemic poetry event on the Larkin Street steps outside the main library and in collaboration with the Friends of the Library's step sales. We have Josiah Luis Alderete, the curator and host of Speaking Axolotl, a Latinx reading series. He'll bring together a wonderful group of poets, including Alan Cesaro, Florencia Milito, and Susana Praver Perez. For adults, we also have a Latinx mystery writers panel that evening, a partnership with the Northern California chapter of Mystery Writers of America. The event features Alex Seguera, Raquel Ayres, Richie Narvez, and Lucha Corpi, and is curated by Michael Nava. And these are all amazing writers if you're a mystery fan. Their books range from detective genre to suspense to scary, scary thrillers. Then on September 23rd, we will have members of San Francisco's International Flori Canto to talk about their mission and read from their latest works. Flori Canto, if you don't know, promotes literature and culture along the 24th Street corridor in the Mission. And they have a vision to illuminate the literary arts and enhance the collective well-being of the neighborhood. This event will also be offered live in person, we hope, in the Skylight Gallery on the 6th floor of the main library. Next slide, please. Some other author talks we have on September 26th. We'll have Jaime Cortez, who discusses his new collection of short stories, Gordo, set in a migrant workers camp near Watsonville in the 70s. On September 28th, we have one of our favorite authors, Carolina de Robertis. She's a best-selling author and a teacher at SF State, and she'll be talking about her new novel, The President and the Frog, an exploration of power, revolution, and survival. And on October 5th, we have author and UCLA professor Laura E. Gomez, who will discuss her new book, Inventing Latinos, A New Story of American Racism. This was named one of the best books of the year by NPR. And on October 12th, we have authors Tomas Moniz and Michelle Cruz Gonzalez discuss writing, education, and Bay Area history. Next slide, please. Finally, our On the Same Page book club for September and October is The Undocumented Americans, a book of literary essays that reveals the hidden lives of undocumented Americans, from the volunteers recruited for the 9/11 Ground Zero cleanup to the homeopathy botanicas of Miami that provide limited health care to non-citizens. It was inspired by the author Carla Cornejo Villavicencio's own history as an undocumented immigrant from Ecuador. So we'll have a book club discussion on October 25th and followed the next day with Carla in conversation with New Yorker staff writer Jonathan Blitzer. And while that concludes our programming offerings, I do want to give you a brief overview about the name of our Viva program series this year. You may know this series from years past as Latino Hispanic Heritage Month. This year, a group of colleagues at the library who identify as Latino, Latina, Latinx made a concerted effort to discuss our program name, to discuss the somewhat controversial history of the Hispanic terminology in our lexicon, and also what felt truly representative and inclusive in our community. After extensive deliberations, we decided to drop Hispanic and go with the more gender-inclusive Latinx term as the moniker for our program going forward. So again, Viva Latinx Heritage Month. We feel a duty, as we did with SWANA. Many of you remember our SWANA month programmings. SWANA stands for Southwest Asian and North African, and moved us away from the term Middle East. We feel important to move our city forward on social issues and be mindful of our community's identity and progress. And if you wouldn't mind if I take a personal note, I grew up really identifying with the term Chicana, you know, from my Mexican heritage and as the daughter and granddaughter of farm workers and activists. And I'm old enough to recall the 1970s, embarrassingly enough I am, when the federal government started using the term Hispanic. And I remember vividly talking with my friends and family in California about how we no longer felt recognized by that term, that it was foreign to us for the government to come up with it. So I guess that's all to say that the terminology changes over time. And I'm very proud of SFPL for being at the forefront of this change, and for taking this thoughtful step to recognize and reflect the identity of our community in the Bay Area and also to our origins from throughout Latin America. Thank you. That concludes me.
Thank you for your leadership, Michelle, and thank you for your report. That concludes the City Librarian's report. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, we're going to go to public comment on this item, which is the City Librarian's report, and we will come back to the commission for discussion after our public comment. Operations, are there any callers in the queue?
Yes, Madam President, there's one caller.
Thank you. Would you put the caller through, please?
Yes, call-in user 10, your 3 minutes starts now.
Yes, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, also P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. First of all, I want to say that it's very wrong to put so many things on a single item, and especially the reopening plan, as though that's some kind of particular program or something. This is the bread and butter. This is the meat and potatoes of the library, and it should certainly get its own item on an agenda. Taking the items in order, $5.5 million for 7 elevators, that seems quite extraordinary as an expense. I haven't priced this sort of thing, but modernization, let's face it, how about we use a plain English language, broken? Those elevators have been broken for months, not working at all. And I'm thinking that this is actually under COVID, and now with the resurgence of the Delta, it's a health issue. I was in the main library recently, and I wanted to go down from the top floor down. Once there were 3 people in the elevator, and now a 4th, I left the elevator. It was just too crowded, and then I waited for the other elevator eventually to come. It's a health issue. With respect to the reopening plan, I still don't see serious consideration of the mess that magazines and, to some degree, newspapers have become. The magazine sections in multiple branches are simply outdated, old stuff. A month and more. I've seen magazines from January 2021 as the current issue. And talk about citizenship and people being able to keep up with things. There ought to be current magazines everywhere. There was a library that did actually much better than the rest. The hours are very important to people, and not to have a single hour after 5:30, I think, is awful. And I think it's misleading to say that there's full service in all 26 locations when there's only 5-day service and there's no evening hour whatsoever. I'm glad that the Maine is contemplating this, and I'm glad about the date. Finally, with respect to the programming that Michelle Jeffers spoke of. I'm still appalled that there is no mention anywhere in any of the publicity that there is available on Zoom, which many, if not most of the programs are, phone access. There's no publicity of that, and there should be for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Operations, are there any further commenters in the queue?
No, Madam President, no other callers in the queue.
Okay, we'll just pause for a moment to see if someone else is trying to call in. Operations, are there any further commenters in the queue?
No, Madam President, no more callers.
Okay, hearing that there's none, public comment on this item is now closed. So we're now going to turn it over to turn our attention over to our commissioners, and we have a very robust city librarians report, and I just want to see make sure that our commissioners had an opportunity to have any questions and or comments that they would like to have made at this particular time with the various library personnel, including the city librarian, who could respond to those inquiries or questions. Well, seeing that there is no hands up, what that tells me is that the report was very robust. It was the content was very thoughtful. I will say I do want to say thank you very much for the reopening plan and just the level of detail that our colleague gave, and just really in many ways sharing the joy that she was a personal witness to. I really appreciated that. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing the joy that you witnessed directly and was able to share it in this public meeting. I thought that was very, very thoughtful. I also want to just say thank you to Michelle Jeffers for sharing her personal experience as she was talking about and sharing about the Viva Latinx offerings. Everything is exciting. I even want to see the kids stuff, children's pieces, but I really appreciated how she commented on her own identity and how she placed it in the ways in which identity continues to be formed by sociocultural forces in society, yet at the same time, identity is something that's quite personal. So thank you, Michelle, for that personal storytelling, because it just further illuminated that this work that we do isn't just for because we love it, but it also is part of our personal narrative. And so with that, I'm going to move on and bring a close to this particular item and go to the number 5, which is the approval of the minutes of July 15th, 2021. This requires a public comment and an action of the commission. So I'm going to go to public comment on item number 5 at this time.
Madam President, we have one caller in the queue.
Would you please put the caller through?
Yes, of course. Call-in user 10, your 3 minutes starts now.
This is, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, and also P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. These minutes are rather less informative than others we've seen, and I think they don't do justice to a fair summary of certainly what the public and what I have said in the previous meeting of July 15th. There were vaguenesses about pretty much everything where I was very specific. I said, for example, that in general public comment, that there were problems with computers, printers, copiers, and lately with the telephone. And it didn't say, but I said, at the main library. And I asked also for people to state in the meeting who is speaking, which document is being discussed, and which page number is being referenced or shown. I also was very specific about my information request, asking each commissioner and the city librarian to provide us with what they are seeing currently on their Webex screen. The anonymous commenter was very particular about the elevators and said they should be working. The key there is they were not and are not, and that certainly should be included. It sounds almost as though he's saying that they are expected to be working or are working. With respect to public comment on item 2, I said I'd like to have all the contact information that I provide put into the minutes, not just as a favor, but as I provided during public comment. And there was a great deal more. I asked a lot of questions about when you're starting the timer, a little early in a number of cases. I asked what happened to universal access. I asked who would be served in, for example, essential workers. This was on the Hub initiative and so on and so forth. Quite a number of questions that I asked that were very specific. I could go on, but there's a lot of detail that we provided and is simply not there and should be to make sense of what we said. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any more callers in the queue? Operations?
No, Madam President, no more callers in the queue.
Okay, hearing that there's none, we're going to move into our commission action. And what we have before us, commissioners, is approval of the minutes of July 17th, 2021. Is there a commissioner that would like to make a motion?
This is Commissioner Wolf. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Okay, that we have both a motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Wolf, and then we have a second by Commissioner Mull. I will call the remaining commissioners by name, and when I call your name, say aye or nay. Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Ono.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Vice President Huang.
Aye.
And I register my own vote, President Wardell, as aye, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you for the approval of those minutes. Now, as we prepare to go into our final item of the day, before we adjourn, in honor of a dear friend and an incredible human being of Janice Mercatani, before we begin that honoring of her, and because of the upcoming Yom Kippur holiday, we will need to reschedule our September commission meeting from September 16th to September 9th. And our Library Commission Affairs analysts will send out a notice informing of that change. And so at this particular time, I'll turn it over to our city librarian to adjourn the meeting in the memory of San Francisco Poet Laureate Janice Mercatani.
Thank you, President Wardell. I really appreciate this opportunity to pay tribute to former San Francisco Poet Laureate Janice Mercatani. You all have a copy of the obituary that appeared in the San Francisco Chronicle in your packets. As a third-generation Japanese American, Janice Mercatani survived World War II internment camps and grew up in Petaluma and Los Angeles. Of course, Janice Mercatani is well known in our city and beloved as the co-founder of San Francisco's Glide Memorial Church and Foundation. She also had a very special relationship with the San Francisco Public Library as the city's second poet laureate and first Asian American to serve in that capacity. Appointed by Mayor Willie Brown, Mayor Katani worked extensively with youth and teen programming and produced workshops at the library to bring an appreciation of poetry to young people. She's best known for her passion for working in service to individuals experiencing poverty and to bring attention to issues of social justice. She served as San Francisco Poet Laureate from March 2000 to March 2002. On a personal level, I had the opportunity this past year to work with her as a member of the San Francisco Poet Laureate Selection Committee. As a former poet laureate and leader in our community, she was heavily engaged in the vetting process that ultimately yielded Mayor Breed's appointment of Tongo Eisen Martin as San Francisco's 8th poet laureate. I will be eternally grateful that I had the opportunity to work with her and witness her contributions firsthand with the level of conscientiousness that she brought to a highly competitive process. San Francisco is a much better place as a result of Janice's light that she shined on our community. Thank you for your consideration of taking action to adjourn the meeting in memory of Dr. Janice Mercatani.
Thank you so much for that beautiful acknowledgement. While we're simmering on those memories and impacts that she's made to San Francisco, we're going to turn to our final and last public comment.
We have a caller is in the queue, Madam President.
Thank you. Operations, would you put the caller through, please?
Yes, of course. Call-in user 10, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. It's Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Certainly endorse adjourning in memory of Janice Mercatani. I unfortunately didn't have a lot of contact with her, but I believe she gave her inauguration speech as Poet Laureate for the city in the Correct Auditorium.
Yes, she did.
Thank you. And she was certainly all over the city in a whole range of ways. So yes, let's adjourn in memory of Janice Mercatani. I don't want to omit what I have usually said at this point, and that is that I certainly hope that in honor of the activism of Janice Mercatani, that the library commissioners might consider doing what I've asked a number of times previously, and that is to ensure that there be an item on the agenda where you get to say what you would like on future agenda items as a way of basically representing your constituency, the citizens and people in San Francisco, and also the your appointed purpose, which is to be a policy-setting body. So thank you very much, and thanks for the nice personal story as well as the obituary that you provided for this item.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your comments. Operations, are there any further commenters in the queue?
No, Madam President, no other callers in the queue.
Okay. Hearing that there's none, our final public comment for the evening is closed. At this time, I'd like to bring it to my commissioners. I just noted that 2 hands were up. Were those hands up from a past time? And now they're back down. Okay. No, I see Commissioner Lopez. Would you unmute yourself and make a comment?
Yes, I just want to say that I was able to participate at this weekend, as it was Saturday's memorial, and it was beautiful. And I want to thank the organizers, and it was very special. I respect and honor her legacy, and it was very, very great to be part of that memorial. So Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lopez. Commissioner Ono, I'm sorry.
Hi, thank you. Janice Mirkatani was not, I mean, she was a force to be reckoned with, not only in San Francisco, but throughout the literary world. She was an inspiration. I got to work with her a few times, and she always made me want to do more. She was beautiful on the inside and also on the outside. I started volunteering at Glide, but it got so popular because her and Cecil were just so amazing that they didn't need any more volunteers. They had so many people wanting to sign up just to help their mission. She's a great loss, and I will miss her. And it's an honor to adjourn this meeting in her memory. Thank you.
Just monitoring the hands. I don't see any other commissioners' hands up at this time. I'll just go ahead and just make some comments. I spoke last to Janice Mirkatani in June, and I had absolutely no idea that that would be my last conversation with her. Some of you know that she was a visiting scholar that I was able to bring into the University of San Francisco while I was there, and she spent a year with us teaching poetry and poverty, transforming students through her incredible life. But she impacted me very deeply, and she was part of the small group of powerful women that I had in my inner circle that I can call upon anytime. And she would advise me with clarity and with love. And to not be able to pick up a phone and call Janice is a loss that that I'm still working through, because it's really hard to believe what is a San Francisco, what is California, and what is the United States, and even her work went internationally. What is it like without a Janice Mirkatani? But giants, you know, they rise up, and then they stay for the time, and now they're gone. And so Janice was petite in size, but she was mighty in spirit and everything else. And so I want to adjourn this meeting of the San Francisco Public Library in honor and in memory of the legacy of Janice Mirkatani, former poet laureate and social justice activist, as well as poet, profound poet, Janice Mirkatani. And is there a commissioner that would like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn in memory of Janice Mirkatani.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Ono. Go ahead.
I would like to second that motion.
Thank you so much. We have Commissioner Ono that made the motion to adjourn in the memory of Janice Mirkatani, and we have Commissioner Lopez that has seconded that. I will call the remaining commissioners by name, and when I call your name, unmute yourself and say aye or no. Vice President Wong.
Aye.
Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Mall. Commissioner Mall.
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
And as President Wardell, I register my vote as aye. The motion passes unanimously in the adjournment. We adjourn this meeting in the memory of Janice Mirkatani. I want to thank the public that has been with us through this meeting. I want to thank you all, commissioners, for the work that you continue to do. I want to thank the library staff and management for the work that you continue to do. And we're so grateful that all the branches of the San Francisco Public Library are open again. We will see you in the updated date that I reported So we'll see you sooner in September than we thought we would, because we want to make sure that we honor Yom Kippur. Thank you so much for being at this meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission.